Linux is a cybersecurity threat. Let's Encrypt ends its expiration notification email service, understandable, and Watchtowr Labs does something with domains again. More in the show. Hello, it's just me again, Bigpod. There is no Josh, there is no guest. I know it's gonna be a boring episode, but actually, it might actually be very interesting. So, let's just jump right in with the first topic. Well, it happened. Linux is a cybersecurity threat. Yes, I'm not joking. According to Facebook, of all groups, or more specifically their internal review people, Linux is a cybersecurity threat and malware. And it went as far as to ban, at least earlier in the week, ban DistroWatch. On actually, it was a couple of weeks ago. It appears like on January 19th, and many people actually had trouble posting links to DistroWatch or anything Linux related for a couple of days. It appears currently it is properly unbanned, but we'll see what happens. So, according to posts on the site, Facebook's internal policymakers decided that Linux is malware and labeled groups associated with Linux as being cybersecurity threats. Wow. Yeah, this is even. And the DistroWatch people have been saying that they have already been hearing things before about their about people having their accounts locked. And you know what's the most ironic part? Linux is what's used for the infrastructure by Meta. Yeah, I know. I know. And people who were like testing things got accounts locked. But it appeared that during this week things got fixed properly. Huh. Well, to me this is kind of stupid. Why ban anything talking about Linux? And I don't think it's anything of the conspiracy talk. I just think it is people who configure these bots or people in the moderation teams who have no idea what tech is, or like they have an idea what tech is, but they aren't tech people, not like us. Might have like some of them might have heard what Linux is, and more fell on the side of Kali, hearing about Kali Linux and similar things, which can be used for hacking and penetration testing, which is essentially hacking for good and being paid for it. But I don't think this is like good idea. But yeah, probably somebody who didn't actually know what exactly happened, and it is probably an honest mistake. No, shall we say, conspiracy here. Well, there isn't much to say, but yeah, this is kind of the side effect of everything being centralized. Because if they decide the whole social media thing, they decide to remove you, yeah, you're done. You're not using that platform anymore. But at the same time, it is just so much more convenient. It's convenience versus slight bad side effects. So I think that's like, I don't have much to say about this topic. I just thought it was interesting because, well, I have nobody to bounce this topic off of. Sad times for Bigpod. So we're gonna go and the next topic. Well, this is gonna be a really short episode this appears. So, but before we go to the next topic, well, I'm gonna talk about a bit more about my adventures into remote doing things on Linux and in general remote computing. Expect on my YouTube channel a series at one point, but this week what I've done is I've set up my, how to say this, my server to also run an instance of VS Code, Visual Studio Code, in server mode, which means I can hit it and access it to the browser because at the end of the day it's an Electron app. And what can I tell you about that? Don't do it unless you're using a device that doesn't actually run VS Code. So a phone or a tablet, for example, would be perfect use cases for something like that. And I'm still gonna run a server of an instance of that, but I won't be using it for development environment because there's just a tiny bit of like prickled edges that just get you, and you're far more boxed in compared to using something like remote SSH from your Linux desktop into a VM or into a development machine than you are running VS Code in the development machine and using a browser to access it. But it appears pretty like, after you install it as a PWA, it is basically unrecognizable compared to your VS Code. But there are just some extensions that don't work exactly right. That's prickle edges here, prickle edges there, that I don't know, I didn't like. But if you want to do it, you sure can. There's also a thing that when you like run VS Code in a browser, it is all running in the browser. So only the resources of building the program and running the program actually happen over there in the on the server, and the actual, should we say, cost of running your VS Code, the environment, still happens on your machine. So you still need some resources instead of just tiny basic resource. But if you like want to, it is actually, if you're okay with dealing with those prickly edges, it is a pretty good experience. Like, and what are those prickly edges, you probably ask? Some extensions don't work. Loading times can be much increased. You cannot use things like remote SSH. But yeah, the loading times, if you don't have a stable connection, you won't get your VS Code instance to open. So I have to wait for that to happen. But yeah, otherwise it's actually pretty good experience. I might actually keep at it for a couple of days, try and make it a bit more working for me, and maybe even use it for a while. But I'll especially keep it around for when I'm using a tablet or phone in, for example, DeX mode with Samsung DeX, which is and the development was one of the things that was most bothersome for me because I had to use a VM and all that, and way too much to do to just have one development environment. Of course, I'm nowadays using that anyway, but that's a choice whether you use host machine with browser, host machine with client, or host machine with something like Moonlight going into the development server. Or you can be a smart person and just run everything on a host machine. I'm just not smart. Now let's go into the topic number 2. Let's Encrypt ending their notification email service to notify you about expiring domains and expiring certificates. So it appeared that they'll be ending support for expiring domain emails, which they'll be ending on start of June, mainly because they have 4 factors they noticed. So number one being that over the past 10 years, more and more subscribers have been able to put reliable automation for certificate renewal, automatic certificate renewal, including me, but sometimes I forget to do it. So it's been a useful thing to have. And sometimes the automation breaks, so good to have a backup, which I'll probably ensure I still have. They also have a need, because of that, notification expiration email service. They need to also, or expiration notification email service. They also need to retain millions of email addresses connected to issuance records. And as an organization value privacy, removing this requirement is actually quite important to them. It also costs them quite a lot of money, like multiples of $10,000 apparently per year, and they think they could better spend it in other parts of their infrastructure. And it also adds additional complexity to their whole system, which they are planning to phase out other things and bring in other more interesting services. For example, I also learned that apparently they will be stopping another service, or are about to stop a different service as well, specifically online certificate status protocol, and they will be stopping that, which is a system of revoking certificates, but they plan to, or intend to, only provide certificate revocation information via CRLs, certificate revocation lists. And actually OCSP is apparently done. Only those who have already been requesting the extensions for OCSP, like must staple, will still have it working until, I believe, May 7th or August 6th, something like that. So, but it is true that at this point, very small percentage actually request certificates with OCSP must staple extension. But don't ask me what that means, because I have no idea. And well, I guess I think that's going away. Hopefully they will bring some interesting services in the future, or interesting ideas that they can bring and enhance our SSL certificate experience. So they also recommended a service if you wish to do it, but I personally think that it should be fairly easy to implement your own, if you actually need that kind of. I want that backup. And at this point, I probably should. I'm not okay. I want to say I'm announcing, but I'll be probably doing just that. I'll write my own. It probably won't use emails. Probably use something like Discord messages, or some other way of telling its user that the as a certificate is about to expire, like a week before or something like that. The plan is that I'll provide myself the backup because I definitely need it, because my automations sometimes break and I then forget to update it, or I just forget to update it if for some reason I have it in manual mode. Like I have a couple of certificates right now because I cannot update them automatically. Specifically, those are the certificates for my home lab, which isn't connected to internet, and it would be kind of hard to update a wild card via, which uses currently DNS as a as to tell them that this is me. So that could be interesting still. So I'm gonna need that kind of notification, at least for that domain. But that could be easily, but as I said, that could be easily arranged because I can, shouldn't be too hard to wrangle something up. It probably will be hard to create a notification part. Getting info about SSL shouldn't be that hard. So, maybe in coming weeks, you may see either on my GitHub or on NoTaxCloud GitHub a new project which may do just this. And if you want to try it, you could try it as well. Now to our last topic. Yes, it's gonna be a very short show. Shorter than short. I really do need Josh beside me or a good guest to make an interesting and exciting and long show. But we're gonna be something like 10-20 minutes in by the time show is done. Yeah, it's gonna be a short show. I'm sorry. So now the last topic on our platter is the guys and gals at Watchtowr Labs or Watchtowr, especially, and they posted on their labs blog that they have done another thing with the domains. So if you remember, they've done the Mobi domain research, which we reported on many months ago now, and they talk about what happened. First, it was quite an exciting research. They managed to basically be able to get any SSL certificate because of an outdated method of detecting ownership of a domain. So there is who is now. What the effect of that was is that Google petitioned the CAP forum to wholly sunset that method, and I believe that's still in work. But the Watchtowr people, well, they said, idle hands, idle minds. It didn't last long, and they started another research. So they wanted to do something else, like in the expired and abandoned infrastructure, but something different. So what they did, they went through what they term mass hacking on autopilot. And the blurb they're using is: imagine you want to get access to thousands of systems but don't feel like investing the effort to identify and compromise systems yourself, or get your hands dirty. Essentially, that's their pitch for this article, or really just pitch for this section of the article. What they have done is they took many domains and used them to access different backend, different already other hacked websites, which is why the article is called backdooring your backdoors. Another $20 domain, more governments. So, what happened? If you remember back in the day, or really now, these days, there are ways to install like what are called web shells. Essentially, pages, programs that can that can do basically all the things on your server. So, for example, loads of those were like in the PHP days, where you could have a shell that basically had a file manager, command execution utility, and so many more. But what it also had was backdoors. Who would have known? A hacker who wrote such utilities also added a backdoor, so you who installed this onto some target server also give them access without them actually even having to do anything. And apparently there are some domains which it called to tell the hackers that this domain has been, or this website has our shell installed. You can use it. But many of those domains are now, shall we say, derelict, not used anymore by those hackers. So they bought them. And they just ran basically a server which hoovered up all the requests. And they got many servers. Essentially they got like requests for like images, things like that. Basically things that might not look out of place, but essentially told the hacker, the original hacker, shall we say, this is the server here, and I live on this address, which may not seem that, like, image doesn't seem that problematic. Like okay, they're accessing images, so what? But then I started thinking like, oh yeah, they have an image, which means they know what's the upstream URL. Oh, goody. Yeah, and to ensure they had always the access, they even did things like pre-built in passwords which you could use. And of course, now that they own the domains, Watchtowr Labs could actually use those shells if they wanted, or more specifically, if they weren't bad guys. They were bad guys. And there's some very interesting things on how they managed to hide that. And they had some really interesting shells and interesting domains they collected. And they found some really interesting people who used really interesting tools. Now, they also found some governments that were hacked. But yeah, like, again, this is actually like, I might not convey how interesting this actually is, but yeah, like, the kind of idea that you can collect and just buy a domain and get information from hundreds of servers, thousands of servers that have been previously hacked is just insane to me. Of course it makes sense, but it's still like, wow. And they actually made like some really like thinly veiled jokes, but it appears that at least they have found at least 4,000 bridge systems. And at the end, they told us that their biggest concern was their responsibility. Now that they've done this, what to do with, well, the data, what to do with the domains, because, you know, if they didn't do it correctly, they would be guilty of exact same careless disposal of infrastructure as people who will drop those domains. So they worked with the group called the Shell Server Foundation, which appears to be a non-profit consortium. Let me see. No-profit security organization working altruistically behind the scenes to make internet more secure for everyone. Probably they do probably some interesting things. They're a security foundation after all. But what they did is they agreed to sinkhole the domains. First of all, take ownership of them, and then sinkhole them so they cannot be like bought again, and any data that will come to them will go right into void. And it appears that Watchtowr might have some other security related interesting stories up their belt, so we may hear from them again, maybe even soon. So yeah, again, as I said, this is a short show, a boring show, a Bigpod show, not that interesting. What can I say? You know what happens when people see that it's only me on the show? They say, yeah, no. And they click away. So thank you guys for sticking it to this point. Uh, 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 well, thank you for waiting for me to reboot. So now we can continue with the outro portion, and I'm gonna thank you guys for watching. You can check out my YouTube channel, Josh's YouTube channel, in the link in the description, show notes, and right below me right now. You can also check out show.taxbase.com, our YouTube channel, No Tax Allowed, if you haven't yet seen the other side of our podcast, and or any other of our various social media like Twitter, Instagram. Yes, we have all those, but and like other podcatchers like Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. I don't know whatever other podcasts we're on. Podcast Index, I guess. And you can check out my and Josh's socials down there, wherever it is, and right below me. And if you like to yell at me, and for Josh to hear about it, you can yell at me on the email right now. You can see it right below me, and it is down in the description / show notes, or on email, or which is the email is contact@taxbase.com. If you want to contact me over email, you can go to bigpod@taxbase.com, or Josh with Josh, or Joshua@taxbase.com. Let me give it a check, because I just forgot. Here we go. Let's see. You know, when you don't know, you don't know. And Josh@taxbase.com. There we go. You can check out Josh@taxbase.com to to yell at Josh without me seeing it, or again over our socials. Also, please check out our Patreon and think about leaving us a subscription there. You can see Patreon right here, show notes, description, all that stuff. You can also check out our Discord channel, description, show notes, I think. It's all there. As well as all the links for today's 3 boarding topics, which would have been much more interesting if I had Josh here. Now, at this point, I think I can leave you guys with one more joke. What happens when a Bigpod records a show alone? Nothing. That's what happens. The sad reality of Bigpod doing show alone. I'm definitely not the interesting guy in the show. I guess that's it. Thank you guys for listening to this boring show, and I'll see you next time. Hear you next time. Or you will hear me more likely. And hopefully, please, Josh, be back. Goodbye.